breaking news.
We're following the breaking news. Deadly new fighting after the sudden collapse of what was supposed to be a 72-hour humanitarian ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. The U.S. blames the Palestinian militants for what officials are calling outrageous and barbaric violations of the truce. We're also following the capture of an Israeli soldier. Israel says Second Lieutenant Hadar Golden was abducted after a suicide bombing that killed 2 other soldiers. However, Hamas denies it's holding Lieutenant Golden. We're covering all angles of the breaking news this hour with our correspondents, our guests, and CNN's global resources. Our chief national security correspondent, Jim Sciutto, begins our coverage. Jim, what is the very latest?
Well, Wolf, Secretary of State John Kerry spent the day on the telephone trying to revive this ceasefire deal. The Egyptians, who were to host talks this weekend in Cairo on a more lasting agreement, saying that invitations are still open. But on the ground, with an Israeli soldier taken captive in the very opening moments of this ceasefire, the prospect for talks are very dim. The fleeting calm over Gaza lasted barely 90 minutes. Soon after the planned 72-hour ceasefire began, the fighting returned in a hail of explosions. Both sides blamed the other.
We've had attacks on our troops inside Gaza, we've had mortars on the border, and we've had rockets into southern Israel. This clearly is Hamas violating this UN-sponsored ceasefire.
The side who violated the ceasefire was the Israelis. They bombed the houses when the people came back after 1 hour and a half.
Israel says that while its soldiers were working to destroy Hamas tunnels in southern Gaza, so-called defensive operations allowed under the ceasefire agreement, a militant detonated a suicide bomb, killing 2 of their soldiers and leading to the capture of Second Lieutenant Hadar Golden. In an interview with CNN, however, Hamas flatly denied the capture. Does Hamas claim responsibility for this capture of the Israeli soldier?
Certainly not. It's clear that the capture of the soldier is an Israeli story. Till now, there is nothing from the resistance saying that there was a capture.
Still, the Israeli response was immediate and severe. Israeli shells near the location of the attack killed some 40 Palestinians and wounded more than 200. On the ground, all sides quickly declared the ceasefire over. Today, President Obama raised the possibility that Hamas itself did not order the operation, though he still held the group responsible for the activity of all Palestinian militant factions.
When they sign on to a ceasefire, they're claiming to speak for all the Palestinian factions. And if they don't have control of them, and moments after a ceasefire is signed, you have Israeli soldiers being killed and captured, it's hard for the Israelis to feel confident that a ceasefire can actually be honored.
The president identified a serious concern that Hamas may not have control over the various militant factions operating inside Gaza, and there are many of them, but Wolf, just in the last few moments, we're getting additional denials from some of those militant factions that they have this soldier just recently, Islamic Jihad, telling CNN it is not holding him. The Palestinian Islamic Jihad as well, telling CNN it does not have him, in addition to, of course, the Hamas spokesman earlier today, who I know you're going to speak to very shortly here. So those are just denials at this point, nothing confirmed, but there are many factions there right now. The real question then, if these factions are telling the truth when they say they don't hold him, who is holding this Israeli soldier? Still an open question.
Jim Sciutto, don't go too far away. Thanks very much. Let's go to Gaza right now, where health officials say dozens of people have been killed in renewed Israeli strikes. CNN's John Voss is in Gaza City for us. John, what are you seeing? What's the latest there?
Well, Wolf, ever since that ceasefire collapse, there's been the renewed sound of Israeli artillery. They seem to be targeting the area east of Gaza City. We have heard that all day long, but it seems the focus of this renewed violence is in down south in the southern area around the town of Rafah. I went down there today, and residents and witnesses told me the area had been pounded by Israeli artillery as well as tank fire. That was an Israeli response after one of their soldiers was captured. And according to Hamas officials, that response killed at least 63 Palestinians in Rafah alone, left hundreds more wounded. And once again, thousands of Palestinians are on the move trying to get out of harm's way. They couldn't stop killing each other for more than 2 hours. By mid-morning Friday, the ceasefire was shattered and the war picked up where it left off. With heavy fighting around the border town of Rafah, many headed to this UN school. They told us there was a ceasefire, this woman told me. We returned home and they targeted us again. Israel warned people here via text messages or robocalls to either stay indoors or find somewhere safe.
Many of the people here say their phones just simply stopped working hours ago. They had no coverage, but they decided to come here to this UN school because they thought it would be safe. They heard the Israeli explosions, the sound of artillery. They saw the jets overhead, and they thought they should come here because this would be much safer than staying at home.
Others decided to leave. In overloaded cars, they sped north away from Rafah, reluctant to stop and talk even for a few moments. They will target us, the planes, tanks and missiles. This area is being targeted, he says. We must go to Khan Yunis. Okay. And this is why they're leaving. At Khan Yunis Hospital, doctors are standing in blood, treating the wounded.
Shrapnels and fracture, explosive injury, open wound, cut, amputated lower limb, mainly amputated lower limb.
A lot of amputated legs.
Yeah, legs.
Like everywhere else in Gaza, supplies here are running low. A 3-day ceasefire would have been a chance to restock, maybe rest, but not now. And once again, Palestinians in Gaza, like Ahmed and her 6 children, are trying to find somewhere, anywhere, that's safe. They've killed 45 members of my family, she says. They've destroyed our homes, my aunt and uncle, all of them killed. Hamas also continues to fire rockets here. Wolf, we're told at least 38 since that ceasefire came to an end. And for a day that started with a glimmer of hope, it now seems this conflict is escalating. Palestinian militants are holding an Israeli soldier. The Israelis are warning of a crushing response.
Yeah, I suspect it's going to get much more intense in the coming hours and days. John Voss, thanks very much. Let's talk about all of this with Mark Rega, the spokesman for the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Are you sure that it's Hamas that is holding this captured Israeli soldier?
Our statements were clear. We said terrorists have kidnapped him and are holding him. That is our working assumption. Now, if it's Hamas or one of the allied groups to Hamas, it makes no difference. Hamas rules Gaza with an iron fist. It's not a democracy. It's not a coalition government. No one can do anything in Gaza without Hamas giving a green light. And Hamas can't subcontract out terrorism and say they're not responsible. Hamas is responsible for all hostile activities emanating from Gaza. They control the Gaza Strip. That's their responsibility, and they are accountable. It must be made clear. We were told, as we were negotiating this ceasefire that was supposed to start this morning, that there had been assurances that Hamas had said that this is for all the Palestinian factions, and for them to come out and say, well, it wasn't us, it was someone else, that's simply mendacious.
Because all these other factions now are denying that they have this Israeli soldier as well.
Well, once again, the Palestinian system is either mendacious or dysfunctional or a combination of them both. It's clear we've got an Israeli soldier who's been kidnapped, and it's clear we're looking for him, and hopefully we'll find him.
And Osama Hamdan, the spokesman from Hamas, will be speaking with him shortly. He says it was Israel that first violated the truce. He says you're using this story of this captured Israeli soldier as an excuse.
I don't know what to say. It's not serious. The ceasefire kicked in at 8 a.m. this morning. We honored the ceasefire. We ceased all offensive operations against terrorist targets in Gaza. Our soldiers were in a defensive mood with orders only to return fire if fired upon. And Hamas, out of the blue, without provocation, targeted an Israeli force that was allowed to be in Gaza according to the ceasefire agreement, killed two servicemen, kidnapped this young officer, injured other people. We've seen barrages of rockets into southern Israel. We've seen mortar shells on the frontier. Hamas is clearly responsible. I've seen it said, some people are saying, well, the ceasefire fell apart. No, that's not true. Hamas destroyed the ceasefire. That's what happened.
He specifically says, Osama Hamdan of Hamas, that Israel moved tanks 2.5 kilometers inside Palestinian land, which was a violation of the ceasefire.
On the contrary, any movement that might have happened before 8 o'clock, and that was allowed under the ceasefire. The ceasefire kicked in at 8 a.m., and I challenge anyone to show a single Israeli violation of the ceasefire after 8 a.m. this morning. I know, because when we give an order to our forces and that's spread out, we know that order is enforced. And Hamas had enough time. The ceasefire was, announced 10 hours before it kicked in? Before that, negotiations had been going on for days. So Hamas can't claim it didn't know. Hamas can't claim, oh, this came as a surprise. Hamas was mendacious. They gave assurances to the United Nations and to others, and they broke their commitments, and they have to be held accountable for that.
Are Israeli troops going house to house in that Rafah area right now searching for this missing lieutenant?
Whenever you have a kidnapping like this, the operational behavior pattern is clear. You try to seal off the area of the kidnapping, and then, as you say, you go house to house, or maybe I should say tunnel to tunnel, in the immediate area to try to locate the kidnapped individual. Why? Because if they manage to get him out of the area into another part of Gaza, your chances of finding him are dramatically lowered. So there's a very intensive military operation underway as we speak to try to find him.
Are you prepared to negotiate for his release? In other words, release Palestinian prisoners in exchange for this young lieutenant?
The focus now is to try to find him, and that's where the effort is. What will happen after that, I don't know. I hope we find him.
Any chance that a ceasefire can be restored?
Look, it's very difficult. And I want to praise the Secretary General of the United Nations and, of course, Secretary Kerry. There was a lot of effort. This ceasefire that started this morning was worked on for days. Endless phone calls, endless meetings, endless consultations. Slowly but surely, Secretary Kerry and Ban Ki-moon, the Secretary General of the United Nations, put together this package painstakingly, talking to the different parties who deal with Hamas and so forth. In the end, we had a package, and then Hamas just rips it up and throws it out. And let's be clear here, the package was designed first and foremost to give the people of Gaza humanitarian relief that they badly need. And who destroyed the package? Who is preventing the alleviation of the humanitarian situation in Gaza? Hamas, the same organization that says it speaks for Palestinians. Well, the truth is, I think it's been proven, it's been demonstrated beyond a shadow of a doubt, Hamas doesn't give a hoot about the well-being of Palestinians. It has itself now deliberately prevented humanitarian support coming to the people of Gaza.
Mark Regev, the spokesman for the Prime Minister of Israel, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Up next, we're going to get the other side of the story. My interview with the Hamas spokesman, Osama Hamdani, standing by live. We'll discuss what's going on. Plus, more on the capture of that Israeli soldier. I'll talk to the man who helped broker the release of another Israeli soldier who was held by Hamas for 5 years. We're live here in Jerusalem. And this is a Situation Room special report.